Planning a London itinerary sounds simple until you actually try to do it. In this episode, we break down the biggest mistakes visitors make, what's really worth prioritising, and how to experience London without rushing or missing the magic.
Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. Each week, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Walks and Devour Tours. If you're planning a trip to London, you'll already know the challenge. There's a lot you want to do and only a limited amount of time to fit it all in. That's where the right tour makes all the difference, because you want experiences that are the best use of your time, with more access, less waiting and a deeper sense of the city. That's why we recommend Walks and Devour Tours. They offer walk-in tours and food tours designed to make your time count, often with early or after hours entry. You'll also be with exceptional local guides who add the stories and context, so you leave with a richer understanding of what you're seeing and a trip that feels genuinely memorable. If you're visiting London as a couple, with family, or you simply prefer a more intimate experience, Walks and Devour Tours also offer private tour options. To learn more, you'll find the link in the show notes. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the UK Travel Planner Podcast. Now, this week, my guest is a returning guest who was on the podcast a few episodes ago, talking all about eating your way around London. So Becky has agreed to come on again today to talk about building a London itinerary, which is something I do a lot on my London Travel Planner website and my UK Travel Planner website. But I really want to chat to Becky because of her experience living in London and working in London, to see what advice she could share with us. So hi, Becky, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, Tracy. It's lovely to be back with you again. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Now, if for those of you who haven't listened to episode 186, the first thing I would say is straight away after this episode, go back and listen to it. It's only a few episodes ago. But if you haven't listened to that episode, it'd be a good opportunity now, Becky, just for those people to just do a quick introduction and say what it is that you do, where you live, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, yes, my name's Becky. I walk and work for Walks and Devour Tours. I am working as a tour guide currently, so I'll be delivering some of the tours if you book in with us. But also I'm working in the background, filling in for my colleague Charlie, who you guys may know from previous podcasts, while she's away. So yeah, working as a guide, helping to keep the tours running in the background, and absolute history nerd, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's quite exciting as well. So if you listen to this podcast and you book on a walks tour, there's a possibility that you could meet Becky, which is amazing. And I know Charlie actually met a few of our listeners in Edinburgh last year, and it was lovely. She said she felt like a star. So you never know, Becky, you might meet some of our listeners on some of the tours, which would be great.
Amazing. Look forward to it. And Charlie absolutely is a star.
She is. She's lovely. She really is. Now, let's dive into creating a London itinerary, because that is something that we get asked about all the time. And people get really kind of quite anxious and a little bit stressed out about planning at the time in London. And from your experience, because obviously you meet loads of visitors from the job that you do, what do you think it is that people find hardest to decide when they put together their London itinerary?
It's a really great question. And the thing that I think I've seen the most from people, I think when you're traveling so far, and for many people, this might be a once in a lifetime trip. It might be, something really special they're doing. They're traveling a long way to get here. And so there is so much in London to do and see that I think quite often people fall into the trap of, I've got to do absolutely everything. And so I see examples of people's itineraries and they are absolutely jam-packed. They are crammed from start to finish, and my question tends to be to people who really want to sort of fit as much in a day as possible is, when are you giving yourself some downtime, to basically just go and experience the city and just soak it up without necessarily having to actively do anything? And I think part of that is also knowing what you can fit in a day in different parts of London. So, if you're going to the ABBA experience in the evening, which is in East London, you might not necessarily want to be, over in Kensington and West London in the afternoon and then having to rush over on public transport or jump in a taxi. So part of it is time planning, in the sense of fitting it all in, and another part of it is distance, knowing the things that work well together because they're in a similar area. And London is so vast that if you're a newcomer to it, it's very easy to kind of get lost before you even get here.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And that we help so many people with their London itineraries, and that is a question that I ask all the time, is like, where is that downtime? Because it's exhausting. And, I can fall into this same trap because I get very excited about the fact I've got a month in London or even 2 months in London. And I think that I'm going to go and see every museum in London. I'm going to go I have these grand schemes of what I'm going to do, and I have to pay myself back. And I'm really experienced because you just get so excited. You think, oh, I'm going to do all these things. And then, as you say, if you don't, you've got to plan really strategically, because what will tire you out as well as waste your time is getting across London to go and see different things in different parts of the city. So it's a good idea when you're sorting out your itinerary to look at exactly what is in a particular area and what you want to do that entire day. Like if you book dinner somewhere in Covent Garden, like say you've got to think, are you going to do a day trip out of London that day and then get back? Are you going to have time to go and do that sort of thing? So it's really important to kind of like look at your whole day and put the kind of the jigsaw of the pieces together. And some of the best times in London I have are actually just wandering through Greenwich Park, or popping into a shop and having a wander around. Liberties in particular I really like, just that that sort of thing. So obviously for all of us, we all have our different things, that experiences that we like to do, and I'm sure anybody listening to the podcast will know exactly what the things are that I like to do, because I wax lyrical for hours and hours about the things that I enjoy doing and say these are really worth you trying out if you're going to go to London. But obviously everybody's different. But what do you think, based on the feedback, because you meet a lot of people on your tours, what do you think are the London experiences or moments that you believe or you have heard leave the strongest impressions on visitors?
I think it depends on what the guests' interests are, most definitely. But I think the universal thing for everyone, no matter what they're coming here to do or see, is just how old some things are. And I think, it's one of the most visited attractions in London, but it is for good reason. When you go to the Tower of London and you have someone point to, if you're on a guided tour, you have someone point to that tower in the middle, that white tower, and you go, that's 1,000 years old, give or take. That was built when William the Conqueror came here and basically started, what has now become our modern, English British monarchy. And it's looking at things like that and seeing that deep connection, that you are walking in the footsteps and you are walking potentially on top of, a millennium, 2 millennium plus of history that's gone on before you, and to have a direct connection with that, I think people find quite special. I think the other thing on a more kind of social level that I think people get most out of London is just the kind of welcome that people get when they come here. I think, if you're coming to a big city, I think there's a certain perception, we're a big city, millions of people, we might not be that friendly, but just in terms of day-to-day interactions that people have with people, you're going on the tube and you might be quite intimidated by the tube if you've never travelled on a transport system like this before, but there's always someone you can ask, and there might be someone there to help your luggage if you're on the Elizabeth line from Heathrow and you've got lots of heavy bags, and it's those little moments of kindness that people get out of being in London that really resonates with people. I've had quite a few people say to me, Londoners are so kind, and that really warms my heart, because sometimes the perception from elsewhere is otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, we say it all the time. Everybody is so friendly. And if you need some help or you're not sure, there's always somebody that will. And quite often, if people see that you're a little bit confused or you're not sure where you're going, people will come and ask you if you need any help. And that's always really lovely. And I'll say that people will they will offer to help you if you think that you don't know where you're going. And if you are lost and you're not sure, just ask somebody, because people will always want to help you. That's for sure. It's a very friendly city. And that kind of goes nicely into my next question, is where do you think, how visitors' expectations, how do you think they compare to what they expect visiting London to be like, and visiting some of the kind of the major London landmarks, which they may have been dreaming about since they were small children, and how do you think their experiences are kind of better and more intense, I think, if you do that via a tour? Just a quick pause to thank our sponsor, Walks and Devour Tours. If you're planning a trip to London, you'll already know the challenge. There's a lot you want to do and only a limited amount of time to fit it all in. That's where the right tour makes all the difference, because you want experiences that are the best use of your time, with more access, less waiting, and a deeper sense of the city. That's why we recommend Walks and Devour Tours. They offer walking tours and food tours designed to make your time count, often with early or after hours entry. You'll also be with exceptional local guides who add the stories and context, so you leave with a richer understanding of what you're seeing and a trip that feels genuinely memorable. If you're visiting London as a couple, with family, or you simply prefer a more intimate experience, Walks and Devour Tours also offer private tour options. To learn more, you'll find the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I think the thing that tours really do for people is give people that additional context and that knowledge, without having to maybe click through things on an audio guide or read a guidebook as you go along. That helps you. I'd say that kind of method, although it's very useful, means you're still kind of passively viewing what you're experiencing. But I think the thing, if we take Westminster Abbey, for example, again, one of London's top attractions, and it's, again, so old, so steeped in history, so people might have seen it on the television from watching the coronation of King Charles, or the funeral of Queen Elizabeth, but there's so many more deeper layers to that. And if you're just going around Westminster Abbey on your own, you might look up and go, oh, well, this is all great and very beautiful. But having someone like a guide in there with you, telling you stories about, some of the kings and queens who are buried there, telling you how it came to be that this wonderful building even exists, and the fact that several hundred years ago it was basically a wasteland, and then got built and remodeled and reshaped over time, and as the centuries passed and as new kings and queens come into play, and it just gives you that extra special feeling being with a guide. They're giving you that human contact and that enthusiasm as well, that tells you, look up here, this may look quite unassuming to you, but it's got something really deep behind it, and it really helps bring a space to life, I would say.
I think so. And, so I was at one point a history teacher, and I used to teach history in a very much a storytelling way, because I knew the kids would remember it, and they'd learn it, and they'd enjoy it more if they learned it in that story format, rather than, reading a boring textbook or worksheets as it used to be. But I think and I'm not a massive fan of audio guides, because you're just kind of immersed in your audio guide, kind of wandering around. And you miss the opportunities that you have when you're with a guide of actually asking the questions that things you might miss for a start off, things you're not sure of, that you can get that explanation. So it just gives you so much more of a deeper understanding of what you're actually looking at, which is why I always encourage people, when you're putting your itinerary together and you're thinking, okay, I want to go and see some of these major sites, why it is worth considering having a tour for that. Not only that, but also you get to skip the line, so you're not standing around waiting for hours to get into some of these places, but it just makes your experience so much more immersive and meaningful.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. It's great, and the ability of our guides to tell stories and some of the things that they come up with is great. I mean, we no two tours are the same for that reason. We cover the same things and we cover the same subjects and spots, but you never know. Your guide might have a particular historical interests that might align with yours, or if you talk to them about what your interests are, they might have some knowledge that they happen to know that ties in with that. So you're absolutely right, asking those questions, not being afraid to actually go to your guide and say, actually, this is the stuff I'm really interested in, because you never know what kind of deep level of research your guide has been going into, and they might have something wonderful to tell you or show you that you wouldn't get elsewhere.
Yeah, it also takes me back again to when I was teaching. Sometimes some of the kids would ask something that I wasn't necessarily sure of, and I would make sure that I'd find it out for the next time I saw that class. And I guess it's the same for guides as well. If somebody asks you a question or there's a particular interest coming up, is that you're probably going to go and do more research, so that if that comes up next time, you're going to be able to answer and give loads of knowledge and experience and knowledge from whatever you've been reading about.
Yeah, absolutely. Guiding is a lifelong learning process. You're never going to stop learning, for sure.
That's perfect. Well, I think that's the same for all of us. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been to Westminster Abbey or the Tower of London, and I learn something new every time I go there. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, because obviously when people are putting together their itineraries, they're thinking about some of the major big hitters that, everybody wants to go to Tower of London, everybody wants to go to Westminster Abbey, most people want to go and see the Changing of the Guard and Buckingham Palace. How would you recommend people putting the kind of big must-see landmarks? And I know I'll get criticised. People say, well, that should we call them must-see? Well, to me, they are the big hitters and the things that kind of typify London. So it would be good to just go and experience those. But if people wanted to do some kind of the smaller or sort of more immersive experiences, can you combine them? And I guess really what you're saying is, really on a tour, not only are you getting some of that you kind of get the experience of visiting somewhere like Westminster Abbey, but you also are getting that kind of immersive experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. So tours are a great way of doing it. I would always say, because again, packing itineraries, I would say, if you can and if you've got time, never aim to do more than one tour in a day. But with that tour, depending on where you're ending, you might have something very cool that you can go and do afterwards. So with Westminster Abbey, for instance, you can go and have a lovely guided tour with one of our guides, get that really deep knowledge. You go and see the historic guard change as well, which is just around the corner. So you're not walking too far to get there. And then by the time you end your tour, you'll be somewhere in the region. You'll be around Whitehall, around Horse Guards Parade. You're round the corner from Trafalgar Square. So that's a wonderful sight just to view, just for the spectacle of it. You've got spots for lunch around there. You've got Leicester Square and Covent Garden around the corner. And then you've also got the National Gallery as well. So taking that all as an example, if you do that Westminster Abbey tour in the morning, you can find yourself a nice spot of lunch in the area around Trafalgar Square or Covent Garden. And then you've got the National Gallery, which you can spend the afternoon going in for free at your own pace, though the gallery does have its own guides as well. So you can get more of an explanation of the art that you're seeing. But if you just wanted to spend an afternoon whiling away the time in a beautiful building, just looking at some fantastic European art, from the last few hundred years, then that's a really nice way to combine a guided tour and something very immersive with a little bit more leisurely at your pace kind of downtime. Other things that don't involve a tour, maybe. I talked about ABBA earlier as an example. Lots of guests are telling me that the ABBA experience is really, really popular. But they might not realise that it's actually quite a ways out in East London near Stratford, which is very, very accessible by public transport. But you might not want to be doing something in central London on the afternoon of you going to that experience. So in Stratford, you've got the newly opened V&A Storehouse, which is basically an extra part of the Victoria and Albert Museum where you can go and see so many of the things that they can't fit into the museum, and they've got lots of it. And then you've got, Stratford areas, very up and coming these days. You've got the old Olympic Park, the canal side, Westfield Shopping Centre. So you can find some spots for dinner before you then go along to your ABBA experience in the evening. And so it's about looking at those sort of small little pockets of where you're going to be at a particular time, and then looking at sort of what's directly or short walk close to it. And I think that will make a lot of travellers' lives a lot easier.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm just going to mention that this is Stratford in London, not Stratford upon Avon, which is...
yes, thank you, Tracy.
I just know I'm going to have some listeners who's going to be a bit confused thinking Stratford, because you'll only have heard of Stratford upon Avon, aka Shakespeare. So this is Stratford in London. So different place completely. But that's an absolutely good point to make, and it's true as well what you're saying about having one of those kind of big hitters in a day is enough. Doing two is exhausting. What about combining some sites and experiences that work extremely well in a day? And I know walks do have a London in a day tour. I've done that one before. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that works?
Yes, absolutely. The beauty of that tour is that it's getting you from Westminster to East London at the Tower, but you're doing it after lunch by riverboat. So it's a day tour, and full disclosure here, it's a fair amount of walking. You've got to be prepared to get your steps in if you want to do this tour. But it allows you to get a really good basic introduction to London in a day that covers two of our main sites in different areas of town. So you start off in the morning at Parliament Square. You get to see the wonderful Houses of Parliament and Big Ben. Your guide will take you into the Abbey. As Tracy said, it's skip the line. So you're going in via a special entrance with your group. You'll get a lovely amount of time with your guide in the Abbey, but not too long. You'll get basically the highlights of the place as you go in. And then afterwards, you'll do a walking tour, depending on what day it is. And if guard change is on, you'll check out the guard change. You'll get to see Buckingham Palace. You'll get to walk up the Mall and see Trafalgar Square. Then you break for lunch and you get a really decent, good hour-long lunch. The guides are brilliant at providing recommendations for lunch spots in the area. You can ask as many questions as you like and get the food that you want. And then after lunch, you meet back up. Your guides will get you onto a boat, and you do a lovely riverboat that takes you down to the Tower of London, where you will get to finish off the day. So you get to see the crown jewels. You get to see the White Tower, which goes through a great history of armory and imprisonment during the time. You get to check out all of the little hidden spots in the tower with your guide as well. So one of my favourite ones is the Beauchamp Tower, which is where a lot of political prisoners were imprisoned, and you've still got the scratchings on the walls from the graffiti showing who these political prisoners have been supporting. which is just fascinating to just see and transport yourself back in time. And the great thing about the riverboat is that you get to see all of those wonderful things on the city skyline that make London so iconic and that you see everywhere. So you get to see the Shard, you get to see the Globe, the Millennium Bridge, St. Paul's Cathedral, Tate Modern, all of these things you get a lovely view from the river to see. So it's a really good way of helping you connect the dots in terms of where things are during your tour, but giving you a flavour of two different places in London without having to feel like it's particularly rushed. It's a good long walk, but it's at a decent pace.
It's a good day. I actually have done that London in a day tour. I did that with Melissa Jones, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. She was traveling in London solo, and I joined her on the tour, and we had an absolutely lovely day. And it meant that I could take all sorts of took lovely photographs at the Change of the Guard and at next to Red telephone box, and then I took her to cafe in the crypt for lunch. So we had a lovely day. It was a really good day and a really good way of seeing a lot of, you see the Tower of London experience with a guide, you experience Westminster Abbey with a guide as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really it's a busy day, but it's a well-paced day. So I highly recommend that. And you kind of touched on there as well, the fact that you do the trip down the Thames, which is fantastic. And that's one way as well to kind of, you're slowing the pace down. Other things, other experiences that you would recommend that people consider to, if they've had a couple of full-on busy days, that they can, what are ways they can kind of slow down a little bit? What things could they do?
Yes. There's so many things. I could do probably a whole podcast just on that alone. But I would say, so one of my favorite things to do personally is a walk along the riverside. So, pick a spot. If you're staying near to the river, join the river close to you. Personally, my favorite stretch is if you head across Westminster Bridge, and walk down the river past the London Eye. If you've got a lot of time, you can, have a lovely leisurely stroll towards London Bridge. You can pop in at the Tate Modern Gallery along your route. You can check out the outdoor bookshop that's opposite the British Film Institute, the National Film Theatre. You can stop off at a pub along the way, because of course we have many. And so it's a really nice way to sort of while your way along. And if something takes your interest and you want to pop into the gallery, or you want to get to London Bridge at the end and sort of have a wander around Borough Market, then you've got all of those different options available to just sort of peel off and do something as you fancy. The other one I would recommend that isn't mentioned so much is head on the Northern Line up to Angel. You'll be in an area, it's called the Angel Islington. So you'll be in the general Islington area. If you're into your shopping, there's lots of lovely boutiques around this area. And there's also a little side street called Camden Passage, which will have antique fairs, has beautiful little cafes, has lovely little antique markets that happen in boutique shops. So you can really feel like you're doing London as a local would do, which I think gives you the authentic London experience. And then the other thing I would say is pick a park and go to it. We've got so many lovely parks. If you do Regent's Park, you can tie in London Zoo. If you go to Hyde Park or Kensington Gardens, you can tie in Kensington Palace if you want to. And if you don't fancy doing all of that, and it just happens to be a beautiful day, whatever time of year, and it's just a nice opportunity to wander around, take in some of the local nature, have a coffee, have a sit down and a read, and really just change the pace of your trip for a bit.
Absolutely. If the sun is out and it's a little bit warm, you're going to see most of London out there on a deck chair, won't you?
Yes, absolutely. We take our opportunities where we can.
Absolutely, get a bit of sunshine and get out there in the deck chair, especially if it's a long weekend. I just always think you just see the parks full of all Londoners outside enjoying the sunshine, especially after the dark and long winter that you have, that I don't have anymore, thank goodness. But it's always that
Yes.
looking forward to spring and then into summer and getting out and about. And one of my favourites is, I've mentioned it before, is Greenwich Park. I love Greenwich Park, going there and having a wander around there. It's
Yes.
lovely. It's a beautiful area down there. And it's a nice boat trip as well, to go down there. Of course,
Yeah.
you could also, one thing that I love doing, to slowing the pace down, is booking an afternoon tea or somewhere nice and just enjoying a leisurely, eating some lovely food, having some nice cups of tea, and just enjoying that experience. I think is a lovely kind of bit of a breather. So, and there's lots of places and opportunities to do that in London as well. I'm trying to choose at the minute the many afternoon teas I'd like to do when I'm over there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Afternoon tea. Yes, you're right. It does change that pace. It makes you feel a little bit special. It's something that you can, depending on the venue and the type of afternoon tea you're going for, there's a wide choice available. And you're right, it's so difficult to choose. But if you want a relaxed one, the one for me, and yes, gonna plug this and show my bias a little bit. We have a Kensington Palace tour that includes an afternoon tea and a royal walking tour. So you get to while away your morning with a fabulous guide who will take you on a leisurely walk through Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens. We'll do lots of royal history with you along the way, because there's lots to see and discover. And then you go into this beautiful space which has been newly renovated, called the Orangery, which comes from the early 1700s, the building. It's fantastic. It's so beautiful, and airy, and a light space, and the staff there really do treat you well. You have this wonderful afternoon tea. They cater for all kinds of different dietary requirements, which is a bonus as well. And after that, you get to spend your afternoon going and enjoying the palace. So you get, a really nice little day out, that finishes off with you in this just glorious grand space. So you get to be treated like royalty a little bit, but without feeling like you've got to be too dressed up. You can still be quite casual about it. It's nice.
Yeah, I like the sound of it, and I like the fact that if you're including any walks and devour tours in your London itinerary, how well balanced they are and how well they fit together. And then also it takes off a lot of the heat off you trying to get tickets for things, or thinking about standing in long lines to get into different places. And I think that's important to think about. If you've only got a short number of days in London, you want to make the most of it. Which is another question we get asked all the time, and I'll ask you this one as well, Becky, is what do you think people should lock into their itinerary before they arrive in London, and what things do you think they can be a little bit more flexible about? And I know this definitely will also depend on the time of year, but I think it's worth if people want to do a tour, or they want to do a specific afternoon tea, those are worth booking in advance for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Tours, afternoon teas, any special occasion dinners that you might have planned. So if you're really wanting to go, on the higher end of fine dining and restaurants, definitely lock in those bookings as soon as you can. The tours, I would say, definitely, and try and fit them in earlier on in your itinerary rather than towards the end, so that as your trip progresses and you're getting towards the end of your trip, you're leaving your spots open to maybe to do things at that much more of a relaxed pace, before you go and you fly back, or however you're traveling, because I think it's really nice to give yourself a relaxed tail off end to your trip, rather than just sort of, being at it all the time until the very end. And then, you're getting on your plane and wishing you had another holiday to recover from the holiday.
That's why I say, and it is exhausting. London is exhausting. It's like there's such a lot to do and see. And when you put your itinerary together, I'm kind of swinging back from what we said right at the beginning, is think about giving yourself that downtime, just to actually breathe in and experience the city, whether that's just going for a stroll along the river, whether that's sitting in a nice cafe and having a cup of tea and a slice of cake, whether that is going on the river on a boat or walking through one of the parks. It's like, give yourself the time to do that, because I think that's really important to do. And what about like flexibility? What would you say what sort of things can they be flexible about, do you think?
Definitely museum visits. So with our major museums and art galleries, unless you're wanting to go and see a paid exhibition, the main collections are free. And, they're open most days, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. for most sites, although some galleries will have a late opening if you want to do something in the early evening. And really with those, if you're seeing the main collections at, say the National Gallery or the National Portrait Gallery or the British Museum, then most of the time, unless it's a really, really busy time of year, you can just go and walk in.
Yeah.
If you would like to tie those into an itinerary, they do have options that you can go in and book in time slots. And if that gives you peace of mind, then go for it. But if you'd rather leave it kind of open as to what you see and when, and, what you kind of fancy on the day, because everyone's moods change in the moment when you're here, then you can be rest assured for those kind of places, or for the Victoria and Albert Museum or the Science Museum, or the Natural History Museum in Kensington. You can rest assured that you can just pop out into those places where you want. Though if it does pique your interest and it sparks you further and you want to have a look at the paid exhibitions, a lot of the time, especially during weekdays, you'll be able to find time slots for those paid exhibitions online at the last minute or at the ticket desk at the gallery. So you can still do that as an extra thing on the day if you'd like to.
Yep, that's great advice, Becky. Now, if I'm going to finish the podcast with my usual question, in this case, it is, if you have one piece of advice to someone building their first London itinerary, what would it be?
Great question. I think, as we've said throughout this discussion, pace yourself. Be realistic about what you can do and the time that you have, and take that downtime. Really do plan that into your itinerary, so you get the best of both worlds. You get to be on the go and doing lots of wonderful things and seeing lots of landmarks and having lots of wonderful experiences. But even if it's just going and sitting in a local coffee shop of a morning and having your breakfast there and just watching the world go by from a lovely vantage point, make sure that you give yourself the time for that as well, because you will feel so much better for it in yourself, but you will also really feel like you're soaking in the atmosphere of a city. And sometimes even Londoners will be so quick to rush to things in our busy lives that we need to remind ourselves to stop and do that too.
That's absolutely true. That's a very good piece of advice, Becky. Thank you so much for once again coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Tracy.
It's always a pleasure to chat. Hopefully I will catch up with you in London in a few months' time. I'm very much looking forward to that. It'll be great. So hopefully some of you guys listening to the podcast will be coming on some of the tours. You never know. You might meet myself or Becky. We might be Becky would be hosting the tour. I might just be on the tour. But that would be so cool, wouldn't it? But as usual, I'll put
that'd be awesome.
That'd be really cool. Thanks so much, Becky, for coming on. As I say, I will link to Walks and Devour Tours, who you work for and who are kindly sponsoring the podcast at the moment. So that's a massive thank you from myself and Doug for that, because it means the world to us. Having a sponsor like you guys, we love the work that you do. We're very much lovers of Walks and Devour Tours. We have never had a bad one. We've always met amazing guides, and so we are really happy to promote you guys on the podcast and say, come on, book with Walks and Devour. They're absolutely brilliant. So I will link to your tours in the show notes, which are uktravelplanning.com/ /episode 189. I can't believe we're on episode 189, Becky. That's amazing. 200 soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Road to 200.
I know.
That's brilliant.
200 will be in May. So I shall be asking our listeners to leave us messages for their favourite episodes. And I may actually interview a few people as well, which I did for the 100th episode. But until next week, I'm going to say bye to Becky for now.
Bye.
And everybody, I will be back next week. As always, happy UK travel planning. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. As always, show notes can be found at uktravelplanning.com. If you've enjoyed the show, why not leave us feedback via text or a review on your favourite podcast app? We love to hear from you, and you never know, you may receive a shout out in a future episode. But as always, that just leaves me to say, until next week, happy UK travel planning.